Sabek, lawful, greetings, welcome. What else we got? We got Kim. Action now, JA, lawful, welcome. Yeah man, we still in our place, you know. Kim, lawful, welcome. Be brave, lawful, welcome. What else we got over here? Welcome, welcome everybody. We're going to have another epic live. We're going to do some constitutional drafting. We're going to do some teaching. We're going to do some learning. And we are also going to talk about real life examples of what we're doing with the draft. TikTok police, lawful, welcome. You know, we are at an advanced stage with the draft. I was hoping to be complete by now. I'm not complaining because the suggestions that have been coming in have been helping to craft the framework of the draft and refine some of the sections that will culminate into what we would call a comprehensive legal framework. Right? I've also gotten some concerns. So we're going to address some of those as we go along. And we're also going to include some additional items that were suggested from some of the emails that were coming in with suggestions. So let us get back to our draft. Where are we going to put this? This goes in the document section. So because the draft is ever evolving, the page numbers have gotten messed up again. So bear with us as we update the draft and pursue a path of inclusion as it concerns the details and the suggestions of those who are reading the draft and concerned about certain areas, and also, you know, just making general contributions, right? Again, not everything is going to be included. However, those things that can be neutrally included will be included. So let us update our draft online. So, alright, that's the right place. This over here, so, and we need to update the page. So yes, I was taking a small break, getting a few things out of the way, and gearing up for the next couple of months. All right, so our draft is updated. Okay, good. And what did we have here? Okay. So all of this we can just get rid of. Alright. Let's close that. So let us get started. First, I'm going to cover a few concerns before we get into the current draft. Right? So let me set up things in place. And as always, if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have suggestions, you can always drop them in the comment section under this video, or you can also submit them on voiceofjamaica.com. The first post, a matter of fact, let us go over it. So we talk in context about how you go about doing these things, because sometimes we have newcomers and they always want to figure out, how do we get to where we are at? So here we have voiceofjamaica.com, right? And you would scroll down, and here we have new constitution. We click on that, and here we have our constitutional draft. We have the Word version and we have the PDF version, right? And we're going to talk about why we have these two shortly. So if we click on the PDF edition, here we will have our current draft, right? So this is the draft we're going to work from today. So the first thing I want to mention is that we have combined the constitutional draft with the Declaration of Independence. All right, so now we will have the updated Declaration of Independence, and you will notice that it has also been updated and expanded, and then the rest of it is going to be what we have formulated thus far in the constitutional draft. Now, one of the concerns we've had is the criminal penalties. So let's go to 284 in the document to address some of these concerns, right? Criminal penalties. So, as you all know, we have some pretty severe penalties, right? Now, some of these we may have, some of us have reviewed them, some of us have just been on the live. Rebuild, lawful, greetings, welcome. Marvin, lawful, greetings, welcome. Now, when we talk about criminal penalties, right? Again, these are your suggestions. These are not mine. So these penalties are from the suggestions that we have received thus far. And like I said before, if you want to add something, or if you feel something may need to be restricted or toned down, present it and we can discuss it here on the live. This is just the draft, so it will be presented to the public as well and publicized more once we get further into final stages of the draft, right? I see the agents are up and about. They are reporting the live. No problem. So, anyways, here we have criminal penalties, and these are for crimes committed and convicted of. So as we've said before, you still get due process. You still have to go through due process in order to be convicted. However, once it is proven with evidence that you are liable for the crimes that are identified, then one or multiple of these punishments are going to go into effect. They're going to be applied to you, whoever it is that is a criminal. So, for example, here we have removal of the private organ, right? So if we have, for example, someone who is going around, graping or doing anything with children, this is basically a mandatory punishment, the removal of the private organ, right? And we've had some concerns from people stating that it's a little bit harsh and this and that and whatever, but on the other side of the scale, the reasoning for this is that if we want to remove corruption from our society, right, and if we're going to remain a civil society, then we have to remove corruption. How can we remove corruption if the corruption itself, when it manifests itself in our society, we allow it to continue proliferating or give it a chance? Remember, people, a crime is not accidental. A crime is something intentionally done to harm someone else. Okay? So this is not something where you accidentally trip and fall and you had a glass in your hand, the glass, break and someone step on the glass and get cut. That is not how criminality works. So it is an intent to cause harm, or you ought to have known that your actions would have resulted in harm, injury, or death of someone else. Right? So, for example, this specific one here, removal of the private organ, or even this one here, removal of limb, right? When we have violent assault, violent attempted unaliving or unaliving, right? Yes, this is a severe punishment, but again, these are proven and due process afforded situations where someone is definitely, based on evidence, convicted of these crimes. So now when we look at these, right, and we think about the impact that it would have on someone who is a victim, that victim will suffer for the rest of their life. Anything could trigger those memories. They can have all sorts of trauma and lifelong problems. So for someone's entire life to be altered because of the mismanagement of cognitive ability or the intentional act of feeling like you can get away with something, it has to be punished severely. Now, that being said, this is not new. This is not something that has never been done before. As a matter of fact, let us look at Google. Here we have a search for penalty for rapists in different countries, right? And if we look here, again, now we can actually use Google, because Google will share the sources where they get these things from. In China, someone convicted faced severe penalties, including unaliving penalty for aggravated offenses. Okay? In Iran, right? This is a capital offense as well. This in Saudi Arabia can also include execution. So when we look at these crimes in different parts of the world, what we are suggesting here is not out of the ordinary. It is not something that is far-fetched to say, if you do this, then that organ has to be removed because that is the problem. You can never, ever do it again. And this is how we rid ourselves of corruption. And once something like this start becoming the norm, corruption ceases. And that is the point of law. The point of law is to rid our society of corruption. Point blank. So again, we're not here trying to be barbaric. But at the same time, we have to protect our society. We have to ensure that when we have individuals, whether they want to be sick in the head, they want to claim temporary insanity, whatever they want to claim, If the evidence proves that it was intentional, the punishment has to fit. Right? The punishment has to fit. And when we take a look at something like this, where someone's entire life is altered, then the punishment is fitting. So again, different countries, if you look at each of the penalties, different countries, when we see how they handle these situations, it is very similar, and a matter of fact, even harsher. Right? So for someone who does graping in Saudi Arabia, then just take you out. Firing squad or something. Then they don't tolerate those things over there. Okay, so why should we be lenient with anyone who, after due process and evidence, is convicted of these things? This is what caused a lot of mental health problems in our society. Okay? So if we're going to solve our problems, we have to get rid of our corruption first. And this is a part of it. So once we get rid of these individuals who are causing problems in our society, then we can start striving. Then we can start feeling safe. Then we can start saying, yes, we are progressing as a nation. Okay? So I wanted to ensure I cover some of these so that people really comprehend why these punishments seem harsh, but at the same time, we also have to take into consideration that we as a society must feel safe. We must ensure that anything that is causing us to feel unsafe, we get ourselves rid of it permanently, not temporarily. Jail alone is not helping. We need to be able to have permanent solutions to fix our issues, right? And for example, here, even after these individuals have gone through this procedure, Damien, lawful, greetings. After the procedure is complete, we also have a tattoo of an X made in between the eyes, right in the middle of your forehead. One X right, there's a tattoo in there, permanently and publicly identifying these criminals. So even if you serve your time, you are still, on top of being in the public registry, you will still have to walk with that shame. Okay? We are not going to hide anyone convicted of being a criminal. Okay? And as you can see, this punishment is also paired with restricted public duty after recovery. So the surgery is done, you recover, and then you start serving your time helping to build our country. Nobody is going to just get away with anything. Just sit down there and yam food, eat and poop and all of them something there, and then you just come back out. No. You have to help rebuild the nation without fee. Okay? So. Right. So, and again, the prisons are going to be abolished. We don't want any prisons. We just want sleeping quarters. Every single day we're going to send them out to work. They must help rebuild the nation. If they have a skill, we put them in that skilled labor. If they don't have a skill, you make them go mix mortar, carry bucket, chop down the place them, help clean up the road them, help rebuild the roads, help rebuild the infrastructure. That is what they're going to be doing. Man and woman are alike. Right? That is how we get our society back. Everybody is treated equally. Right? So for those who are new, restricted public duty. This is where, when you are convicted of certain crimes, if you are not taken out, then this is one of the possible punishments for you, where you get to work over a period of time to become a productive member of society while you serve your time. So the only thing you're entitled to is food, shelter, and water. And you work your punishment off without pay. Okay? So that is what is called restricted public duty. Welcome again, agents. I see you are still reporting the live. No problem. No problem. All right. So again, we have these punishment listed. If you have a suggestion for a punishment, certainly take a look at the draft. We have it here at page 284 in the document, right? Yeah, thieves and those kind of people, they have what's called finger crushed by hammer. We're not gonna just cut it off. You're going to feel that pain, okay? So once you feel the pain, then you have restricted public duty as a concurrent sentence as well. So your finger gets slammed with a hammer, and then after you recover, you're back to work in a restricted public duty, right? And if you don't return what you stole, then you have additional penalty to pay, right? So, yeah, we're not playing with the criminal, them, man. No more jail. Get rid of that, all right? So, that being said, we have a new section down here, so, all right? We go all the way down. This was a recent suggestion we had about religious organizations, freedom of belief, and spiritual accountability. So far in our societies, the churches go unchecked. All of these religious organizations, they go unchecked. That would change under the new constitution. Let us take a look at what we mean. Freedom of conscience. Every person possesses the freedom to believe, worship, practice religion, reject religion, change religion, hold no religious belief. So you can be an atheist, or you can have a religion if you so choose. No person shall be compelled to adopt, maintain, or abandon any religious belief. Right? So you can't force no kind of religion or non-religion on anyone. Right? That is a fundamental right. Recognition of religious organizations. Religious organizations may be established and operate within Jamaica. Religious organizations shall register publicly, maintain publicly available leadership records, and operate in accordance with this constitution. Constitutional supremacy. No religious doctrine, rule, policy, or authority shall supersede this constitution. Currently in our society, in case you did not know, religious belief and religions actually sometimes supersede the constitution. Okay? So we are getting rid of that. If you erect a religious institution in Jamaica, it is subject to the constitution, regardless of what you want to believe. Right? Religious organizations remain subject to criminal law, civil law, and constitutional review. No religious organization shall claim immunity from investigation or prosecution. Because I'm sure we have seen in the news in recent years where members of the church were engaged in what we would call unlawful activity. All right? Freedom to leave. Every person possesses the unrestricted right to leave a religious organization, change religious affiliation, discontinue participation. No person shall be threatened, harassed, detained, or financially penalized because of departure from a religious group. So they can't stalk you, they can't threaten you, they can't do none of that under this new constitution. Voluntary donations. Donations to religious organizations shall be voluntary. No religious organization shall require payment as a condition of membership, require payment as a condition of worship, demand mandatory tithes, demand offerings under threat of spiritual consequence. No contribution shall be given, all contributions shall be given freely and without coercion. I'm sure you've heard the stories as well, right? People go to church and them all lock the door. I tell you how much you need for pay in an offering and all them something there. Rubbish. That has to be unlawful. How can you go somewhere freely and then you are held hostage, demanding you turn over your property? That is ridiculous. Ridiculous. So that is going to be unlawful. If it is not voluntary, then that is a crime. Okay? Prohibition of financial exploitation. No religious leader or organization shall exploit followers financially, manipulate persons into paying, promise spiritual benefit in exchange for money, threaten spiritual punishment for non-payment. So many times you hear different religious groups talking about, you have to tithe, you have to do this. If you don't pay the money, then God not go bless you. And if you don't do this, then you're not going to get this. If you don't do this, then nobody not pray for you. Or they say your prayer not going to work because you're not giving willingly. Such conduct constitutes financial exploitation. Transparency of finances. Religious organizations shall maintain accurate financial records. Records shall include donations received, expenditures, assets held, compensation paid to leadership. Records shall be preserved and available for lawful review. Audits. Religious organizations shall be subject to periodic audit. Random audits may occur for financial accountability, fraud prevention, verification of public records. Audits shall be documented, remain limited to lawful purposes, and avoid interference with religious belief or worship. Protection against abuse of authority. Religious leaders shall not abuse spiritual authority, exploit vulnerable persons, manipulate followers through fear, and conceal criminal conduct. Violations shall result in removal from leadership where applicable, civil liability, and criminal liability. Protection of minors. Religious organizations shall not physically abuse children, neglect children, conceal abuse, or obstruct lawful investigation. Reports of abuse shall be referred immediately to the Office of Family and Children Services and the Office of Public Prosecution. Criminal conduct. Religious organizations shall not harbor criminals, conceal evidence, obstruct investigation, or operate unlawful detention or punishment systems. This is key, Many of you may not realize, but sometimes religious organizations, they punish people and demand that people return to the church or people return to the organization, telling them that God say, and this and that. Again, I'm not going to call any names, but this has to be dealt with. There has to be a mechanism to hold these people accountable who are violating people's rights and their free will. Violations shall be prosecuted under law. Property and assets. Religious organizations may own property necessary for lawful operation. Property shall not be used for criminal activity, unlawful detention, or financial exploitation. Equality before the law. Religious organizations possess no special immunity. Maybe this is too big. Let's zoom it back out. Yeah. Religious leaders shall be subject to the same laws as all other persons. Greater authority shall result in greater accountability. So the higher up you are in the church, you are held to a higher standard of accountability. The principle here is religious freedom in Jamaica shall ensure freedom of belief, freedom from coercion, freedom of expression, freedom to leave any religion, transparency of finances, accountability of religious authority, and equal protection under the law. Okay? So again, the church is free to do normal religious practices. And if people want to donate, they are free to donate. They can do whatever they want within their organization. However, when they start coercing people and putting fear into people in order to get money, that is unlawful. Plain and simple. You can't exploit people and expect that that is a normal religious organizational practice. Absolutely not. We have to protect all aspects of our society, and religion is no different. Okay? So this part is currently a loophole within society. And many times we have reports of all kinds of activities going on with the church or religious groups, and we have no outlet to report these matters publicly. We are going to change that. All right? And of course, if you have any suggestions, you can definitely submit those suggestions so that we can make them a part of the draft. All right? So I also want to talk about this section. The recognition of tribal, indigenous, and cultural communities. Now, in today's society, while certain groups are recognized as organizations, they are still preyed upon, right? There are many groups within society that just want to be left alone. They want to have their freedom, they want to have their rights respected, etc. And again, they are not able to exercise some of those rights. For example, the Rastafarians. For example, other indigenous groups who were here before the British and the Spanish came to Jamaica, right? And even some that came after. They are not able to practice and do certain things because of, anti-human rights laws that are in force and effect. Now, when we talk about these groups, many of them, they are going by common law, right? Many groups just basically say, do no evil against others, right? So they want to live in peace. They want to be able to practice and do whatever they want to do, and they don't want to be interfered with. And while that is noble, and while that is something that, should be respected to a degree, we also have to realize that these groups, there has to be, I guess you can say, a limit to the practices. So just like a religious organization, you cannot be allowed to do just about anything, right? But some of the trivial things that people have faced in the past, we have to get rid of them. Like we said before, plants cannot be made illegal. We ban currency plants, we are gone, we are going to expire, and plants are still going to be here. We cannot be outlawing, people just interacting with nature. The same thing with cars and all them something. You're driving around or you're traveling around in your private car, or even if you're driving for a living, right? That cannot be turned into criminal activities. It is just unconscionable. If you are doing something to make a basic living, and you are constantly being told, or you're constantly being referred to as someone who is going to be engaging in criminal activity, it's almost like you are inciting depression. Some people, they are out there trying to make a basic living, and by the time they get fined for sometimes the things that they are fined for, it is unfounded. But when they are fined the basic living money that they are able to scrape or to acquire in a week or a month's time, they have to now pay it in a fine because they don't have a license, or they confronted an official, or they do something that the system deems to be disrespectful, or whatever the case may be, right? There is no crime committed. There is nothing there that you can say the individual is breaking the law, or some of these things have to be abolished. It has to. And if we as a society continue to allow these things to hinder people making a basic living and actually having some kind of peace of mind and living how they want to live, as long as they don't harm others, as long as they don't break an actual law, then we're always going to have problems. We're always going to have problems. So this is why we include so many specific provisions within the Constitution so that everyone is clear on the law. We cannot have someone determining the law in a court when the law itself is not clear, right? So that is why this document even reached 300 pages, because we don't want to leave any option for someone to use their opinion and determine what exactly the law is. The law should be written, it should be static, it should be unchanging. It should be a fixed goalpost. So if the law say you can do this and the law say you can do that, you should not have to now try to prove that the law says otherwise. You should not have to prove that you are in the right. You should only have to prove and defend if you are in the wrong, right? Yeah, 333 pages. So, that is the point of all these sections here. A single body of law. A single document that encompasses everything that we call law within our society. Now, here is our updated Declaration of Independence, which is infused within the Constitution. So I'm going to read you the updated one. And I know the agents are here, and I can go and take notes. And this is why we are documenting our progress. So when time uno start trying to copy what we have over here, we have evidence that we have been building and drafting this thing for several months. And this is not just something out of the woodworks. All right? The unanimous Declaration of Independence of the People of Jamaica. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for a people to dissolve the political systems that have bound them to a government which no longer secures their rights, a respect for truth and justice requires that they declare the causes which compel them to separation. We, the free people, assembled in full authority, declare that all legitimate power originates from the people alone, and the government exists solely temporarily to secure the inherent, natural, and inalienable rights of every person. These rights include life, liberty, security, dignity, participation in governance, and the full enjoyment of one's faculties without unlawful restraint. Whenever any system of government becomes destructive of these ends, fails to administer justice, denies participation, or act in contempt of the people's rights, it is the right and duty of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new governance founded upon principles that secure their safety, equality, and future. See if I can get it as close as possible for now. Prudence dictates that long-established systems should not be changed for light or transient causes. Yet, when a consistent pattern of abuses, violations, and usurpations reveals a design to reduce the people under arbitrary authority, the obligation arises to act. The present system of governance has failed in its essential duties. It has denied effective participation of the people in decision making. And for those of you who don't know just yet, because we have included this very first provision in our constitutional draft, the government has recently created an institution or an arm of government to take suggestions, because we have put this in here stating that we have been denied participation in our own decision making as a people. But that cannot help, because over the past 60 something years since we have gained political independence, this has been our problem. And even today, when the government has tried to create some kind of avenue to allow for suggestions, it is still very limited and incomplete. 2, it has failed to consult the people about their priority in national matters. Right? Any decision making nationally, any decision affecting us nationally, the government does not consult with the people. They simply go about and they do as they please. 3, it has created immunity within the very constitution created to limit governmental power and protect the rights of people. As we again know, Section 48 of the Jamaica Constitution Order in Council 1962 states that Parliament and the members of Parliament cannot be prosecuted civilly nor criminally. So none of them can go to jail, meaning that they have created immunity for themselves in the very constitution that is supposed to be limiting governmental power. Right? It has continued colonial rule in the courts and remained in the Commonwealth created by the British Crown, the former colonizers, while proclaiming independence from the British Crown. Plain and simple. For those of you who don't know this, you should go and read the Independence Act, the Jamaica Independence Act of 1962, and you will see that there is no people independence. It was simply governmental independence, political independence. 5, it has imposed obligations without meaningful consent. Nothing the government has done in these acts of parliament over the past 60 years has been done based on the consent of the people or the consent of the ruled. All of them has been government suggestions and government implementations. 6, it has failed to provide equal protection under law. There are some people who just get away because they have the means to do so. So there is no equal protection of anyone under the law. And sometimes when you try to represent yourself in court because you cannot afford an attorney, you are refused one. You are refused the opportunity to represent yourself. 7, it has obstructed justice and weakened the accountability of public officials. Even when evidence exists, the court refuses in many cases to allow prosecution of public officials. How can that be equal justice? It has exercised power beyond lawful authority. The Constitution itself limits government power, but they continue to create acts of parliament that have broad and far-reaching consequences for the people. It has ignored repeated petitions for redress and reform. So even when people cry and bawl and talk to the news and send letter, try to sue them in court, it doesn't matter what option you choose. The government simply ignores the people. 10, it has eroded confidence through inconsistency, inequality, and disregard for the public good. People have been crying for body cameras. People have been asking the government why they are taking certain action. The people have presented their problems and the government has not responded. In some cases, I have heard public officials laughing at the cries of the people. It refuses to make public the accounting of the consolidated fund. For those of you who have no idea what the consolidated fund is, it is the accounts for the nation. It is the culmination, the aggregate, the collection of all the accounts that the nation has. None of us have ever seen it. We don't know what is in those accounts. 12, it refuses to declare the necessity for high salaries and massive spending of our monies located within the nation's consolidated fund. Again, We hear about reports, we hear about spending, we hear about purchases, but we have never seen those receipts. We have never seen the ledger. We have never seen the balances. Nothing. All we hear is they have spent, they are increasing salaries, they are doing this, they are doing that. Again, no consultation with the public. It has made acts and legislations purporting them to be general laws governing the people. It has, through Parliament, enacted the Local Governance Act, attempting to convert each inhabitant of all parishes into municipal corporations to circumvent individual protections and then claim criminal jurisdiction and authority over free people. For those of you who haven't been to class, you should probably go and read the Local Governance Act. I think it's 2015. It has criminalized freedom of movement by vehicle, which is listed as a protected activity of the previous constitution. Such governmental actions created arbitrary road traffic acts that turn unintentional operation of a car or motor vehicle into criminal penalties and fines with prison time if not paid. People, just because someone write down words and say that this is a crime, that does not mean that it is a crime. If we don't have damage to property, if we don't have damage to person, or if we don't have unaliving of a person, if we don't have some kind of damage that we are in court for, or some kind of public nuisance or some kind of public danger, it cannot be a crime. You cannot just write down arbitrary rules and now claim that these things are crime if you don't comply with them. And that is what is happening to us today. We have rules perpetrating as law. Everything bundled into the fabric calling it law. It has turned the police force against the people, slaughtering and killing those it deems criminal without due process and without trial. The courts administer actions it calls justice when no clear procedure is defined for everyone to understand and comply with. If you don't have experience with the courts, you will not know what is going on. If you don't hire an attorney, you will not have any kind of justice. In many cases, there are no clear procedural rules where you can say, step 1, you file a commencement document, or step 1, you file a defense, or you do this first, or you do that first, then you do this next. That does not exist. All we have are a bunch of arbitrary rules. We have rules that exist with no clear procedure. There is no step-by-step. So all you're basically at the mercy of the attorneys and the court. The entire system of law is run by attorneys and former attorneys. Judges are not selected nor voted for by the people, but rather selected from a pool of attorneys based on years of experience and other administrative factors. In case you didn't know, judges are simply former attorneys. If that is not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. Judges have twisted the plain language of the Constitution and then use these decisions in future judgments as if they are law, effectively removing the separation of power doctrine that ensures no department of government exercises more than a single inherent power. So the courts and the judges make decisions, and those decisions later have influential value on future decisions, bypassing the Constitution, bypassing the acts of Parliament, bypassing the lawmaking process, which cannot be lawful. 20. It has failed to provide independent and impartial courts to try criminal cases as mandated by the Constitution. The state is the complaining party. The courts are run by the state, and the police are also run by the state, thereby creating an impossibility of justice against any alleged defendant. where a party is also trier of fact or instrumental in instructing the jury, justice is never guaranteed. The courts are also restricted and policed, allowing only those with active cases or their legal representatives to enter or observe the proceedings when the previous constitution clearly forbids such restriction. For those who don't know, the constitution states that all court proceedings must be public unless there is reason to restrict certain aspects of the case because of privacy. Such conditions demonstrate not isolated error, but a sustained departure from the purpose for which government is instituted. History affirms that where authority is exercised without accountability and where rights are ignored or treated as privileges, public calamities and corruption inevitably follow. We have sought remedy through lawful means. We have raised grievances. We have called for correction. These efforts have been met with neglect, delay, or continued injury. Therefore, necessity compels the conclusion that the existing system no longer serves its legitimacy from the consent of the governed, in accordance with the inherent and imprescriptible right of a people. We declare that the political connection between the people and the present system of governance is dissolved. We declare that the people are, and of right ought to be, a free, sovereign, and self-governing body, possessing full authority to establish a new system of governance that reflects their will, protects their rights, and ensures justice for all. We further declare that all authority shall arise from the people, that no power shall be exercised except by lawful grant of the people. The governance shall exist only to secure rights, not diminish them. That all persons shall be equal under the law. That public officials shall remain accountable at all times with no possibility of immunity or pardon. In forming this new foundation, we do not act from ambition, but from necessity. Not to disrupt order, but to restore it. Not to diminish society, but to preserve its dignity and future. We affirm our commitment to justice grounded in law, equality without exception, accountability in governance, protection of rights for all persons, peace with all nations, and hostility towards none who respect our sovereignty. With full awareness of the responsibility before us, and relying upon the principles of justice, reason, and the collective will of the people, we solemnly declare and establish this independence. And for the support of this declaration, we mutually commit to one another our responsibility, our effort, and our enduring obligation to uphold the system of governance we now bring into being. One people, one voice. So this is our current Declaration of Independence, outlining the grievances, the reasons, and the qualities that we require as a people in order to maintain an equal, fair, and just government and society. And this is the very first part of our Constitution. So that means you don't have a separate document called the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution itself will include that document, right? And the document, the Constitution itself has been refined in many areas. I can't go into every single detail here, but many parts have been refined and also combined certain things in certain sections. Why the agent them out in a full numbers today? Keep on reporting the live, man. People keep sharing, keep liking, tapping up the live. The agents are out. I'm not sure if I mashed somebody can, but it's a while now we haven't had this much reports of violations. Anyways, the draft is almost complete. We do have just a few more additions to make, but it is still not completed yet. Keep submitting your suggestions. Again, for those who want to submit suggestions, you can go to the constitutional draft section of the site. Again, to get there, it is voiceofjamaica.com. Right? You go to the first post, which says new constitution, and under the draft links, you have constitutional draft suggestions. And here is where you can submit your suggestions and say what you want to include in the constitutional draft. A little bit later on, I'm going to add the additional suggestions, but these are the past suggestions that were made. So you can go and review and see what was said in the past, what was suggested, and you can make your suggestion from there. Now, again, if you're going to make a suggestion, it is recommended that you read through the section of the Constitution that you find interesting or that you are mostly interested in, or what finds your curiosity, and just look to make sure that what you're suggesting is not already there, right? Because we're only including new sections or new provisions as it relates to these sections. Now, that being said, we're getting close to the end of constitutional drafting. Stage 2 is coming up, possibly within the next week to week and a half. We're going to be announcing stage 2, and from there we are going to proceed with what is to come next. Now, I want to address something, right? With the new constitutional draft, we are not going to have any remnants at all of colonial rule. So all of the things that we are used to, for example, laws being created and passed with nobody knowing about it, nobody having any chance to oppose it or to accept it or to do anything at all with it. Those days are going to be numbered, right? We're no longer going with such a system. Any changes within society, especially those of national or parish importance, the people must approve it by vote, public vote. And voting is going to be live. We're no longer going to have paper and, dipping your finger in ink and all them foolishness there. No, you're simply going to have an ID. You come, you vote, you go home. It's that simple. Or you can stick around and see, what the results are. The voting is going to be live. You don't have to be wondering, I wonder how much vote for this, I wonder how much vote for that. It's going to be live, immediate, as soon as voting done. So for example, let's say we have a voting day. And voting starts at, let's say, 8 o'clock in the morning, right? At 5 o'clock, just like a working day, right? Or make it even, if we say 6 o'clock, 6:30, even 7 o'clock. Matter of fact, why not? 12 hours, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You have a chance to come to the voting location and come vote. So in every town, right? Ochi Town, St. Thomas Town, Portland Town, whatever the major center is, that is where the voting is going to take place. You come, you vote, you can look at the monitor and you can see how many votes is actually being counted, right? Once the voting happens, then the decision is made. The people are actually the ones who make the decision. Once the decision is made, then it starts, either it stops, whatever the decision is, or it continues, where it now goes into planning and implementation stage. That is how our society is supposed to run. We should not have just a few people sitting down and discussing and saying, yes man, that's how it's supposed to go. No sir, when the thing say that's supposed to go like that. It is the people who are supposed to be making these decisions. Could people vote online, example, elderly or disabled? That is something that we are going to have to think about carefully, because we don't want the problem of hacking. We don't want the problem of outsiders trying to manipulate our systems, right? So that is going to have to be something very extensively thought about. So if we are going to allow some kind of remote voting or online voting, it would be completely separate from our local voting systems, because we don't want our local voting systems to be compromised or accessed by anyone on the outside. So our voting stations would be isolated, no internet, just a basic computer with a basic voting program, and that's it, right? If we're going to have outside voting, we would have to have a completely separate system. And in order to do that, we would have to come up with some other system that will allow for, independent and secure voting on a different platform. And then we'd have to find a way to limit, the connections, because as you know, anything of an important nature, you're going to have people who want to manipulate it, take it down, attack it, and do all sorts of nefarious things. So that is something that's going to have to be thought about, and then come up with a solution to allow for a limited voting time. For example, if we have an online platform for voting, we would have to probably limit the time to like an hour or 2 hours, a small window, so that if we even have attempted hacking, it would not be for the entire day where, it can possibly break the system. We would limit it so that we have a more secure system and a narrow window where everyone would vote, and we just shut it off after that. Hey, prior postal votes could work better. Could be a vote, example. Postal votes. I'm not sure about that one. How would that be instituted? There are a lot of things that I can share, but you see, when we talk about technological systems, we have to think ahead of the curve. Now we have AI that can do, a multitude of attempts at websites and things like that. And we don't necessarily want any kind of system that can be accessed by AI or accessed too long by AI. So, again, we would have to really think about how to institute a new type of security in a system like that. Send out the number documents people vote and send it back. That would take too long. We don't want any kind of paper. That is what I am trying to get across. We don't want any kind of paper, right? Papers can be forged. All sorts of corruption comes from paper systems. We have to just have a limited window and live voting, so that we don't compromise our integrity, right? Or what we can also do is, we can limit it by location, If we do postal voting, remember now we have the problem of sitting down and counting the votes. Remote tours, lawful, welcome. We don't want a problem of doing anything manually. That is what I'm getting at. You see the current system of voting where we have all these boxes and all these people involved? We want to remove corruption. If you are elderly, we find a way around it, right? Yes, we can get volunteers to do the task, but no, we're not going to paper. We're removing all paperwork. If you can't access online, figure out somebody to help you. You get me, I say? I get it. We have a large population of elderly and so forth that would like to vote and so forth. However, we also have to think about the large scale implications of a compromised system. The elderly and disabled, like I said, they get someone to assist them. If them can access a phone, if they can access some kind of technology, or they can get family members to help them or somebody, that is an avenue to go. But again, when we talk about security and integrity, we have to think about these things and how we can eliminate guesswork, or we can eliminate corruption, errors, and things like that. Yeah, we don't want the ballot box voting thing and counting and that. No, no, absolutely not. So, as we move into stage 2, I want to explain something here for people who have been asking about and also making suggestions to join with groups or have any affiliations with anyone in a movement or anything like that. Absolutely not. I am not a part of any movement. I am not a part of any group. This is something that I have taken on in order to assist my people. Now, again, not to say that in the future we might not, come together for a common cause to get things done. But as for me personally, I am not affiliated with any group. I am not affiliated with anyone. If you look on my page, if you listen to my lives, I do not have any affiliations whatsoever. Again, that doesn't mean that I don't agree with some things that some groups or individual may be doing, and that doesn't mean I don't disagree with what they are doing, right? But I have not come out publicly and say that I'm aligning myself with anyone, right? So that being said, what we're doing here is not for any political, any group-based, any kind of secluded kind of institution or body or individual. This is collectively. So whether you are green, orange, yellow, brown, black, purple, whatever it is that you affiliate yourself with, I am affiliated with myself. Okay? And if this is useful, if what I am doing is useful, which apparently it is, because we have had a multitude of suggestions, a multitude of people who have reached out regarding the constitutional draft. And if you find it beneficial, then, it is something that you can partake in. But as far as the Constitution is concerned, it is general. It is for everyone. Everyone. You don't have to be a part of any group to gain a benefit from the Constitution. As a matter of fact, it actually supports more individuality than any group. So, again, this is not to seclude or include any specific individual or group. This is for everyone. Everyone. And when we get to other stages where others might support it, others might push it, others might get the word out there. Yeah, even those who are copying the suggestions and the very concepts that are listed in the constitutional draft, it's okay. It's okay, because just like when someone invents something and someone copies it and then it doesn't work as they intended because you don't have the background, you don't have the knowledge about what it's supposed to be doing, how it's supposed to work, the mechanics and so forth, even the draft itself. You can literally copy out the concepts out of it, but there are certain things in there that will cause any other system that you have to crash. So you can take out all you want out of it, But at the end of the day, because it is created in such a way that it will only work with an independent governmental body, any other local system that you have, it is not going to infuse in that system very well, because you still have to answer to a master, right? And Later on, I will share some other things with you that you may not be aware of, right? As far as many of the systems that are out there that are restricting your rights, restricting your property and things like that. Most of it is stolen. Most of the things that we have as a convenience or as a service in society, they are stolen. They are not natural inventions. The people who develop things typically don't benefit from it. Let me say that again. The people who develop things that are instrumental in society, they typically themselves don't benefit from it. It is those who steal it or those in the future who use it in some other manner than it was really intended. Those are the people who actually gain from it. And I have no problem giving everyone my insight into crafting properly the Constitution and where everyone can benefit. I don't need any credit. I don't need any credit, right? I just want my country to be better. I want my people to be happy and safe, and that is why I am doing this. So this is not just my thinking. This is not just what me having in my head. This is what you have presented to me, and I have transformed it into a plain language document that is not confusing, that is not oppressing, that is not taking away your rights or your freedoms. It is actually protecting them more than what we currently call a constitution, which is not. All right, so I just want to make that clear. I want to clear the air on that one. Additionally, when we talk about the implementation of something like this, agents, you will not know until the hour comes. Okay, so you can quit asking. I am not going to explain or say before time what is coming down the pipe as it concerns constitutional drafting. You will just have to see as it unfolds. Okay. Apart from that, again, we're almost done. We're 99% there. Once the draft is complete, as you notice, I have left the Word version available publicly. And there's a reason for that. You see, when something like this goes into place, right? If for whatever reason it is needed beyond me, you all have it. It is not some secret document somewhere. If we ever run into problems in the future where someone needs something like this, I mean, it can be copied from the PDF easily, but the original source is also there. So if something becomes of it, so be it. If nothing becomes of it, so be it. But I can almost guarantee it will be an inspiration for what is to come. So for those who don't get a copy yet, go and download a copy. I want everyone to have access to it. That's why it's made public, right? And for those who are thinking about a revolt or some kind of violence have to happen for change to happen, I am not here to convince you of anything. I am not here to tell you that that is not the only way. But there are other ways to accomplishing the same thing without having to confront anyone and cause loss of life. As we proceed down the path of peaceful constitutional drafting and peaceful declarations and peaceful turning ourselves away from the oppression onto something that we can be proud of as a people, proud of for our future generations to look back and say, you know, say, I'm glad say my mother or my father or my granny or my grandfather or my great-grandfather did take the time to do something like this. Imagine our parents did what we were doing today, and we did not have to live through some of the things that we see on social media or on TV or in the newspaper. Imagine if we already had a world where we not only appreciate each other, but we actually help one another to create a better society where we rid ourselves of corruption, where we stop idolizing money, where we actually help our communities and our land to flourish as a people. Because a lot of people don't realize that if we keep on coveting everything, we guarantee suffering in the future. We don't necessarily have to be sacrificing anything. All we have to do is put in the work. We have to be selfless at some point. So you see those people who you might see now, that you say, boy, man have one house and he have one piece of land. That's all I want. Right? If our parents had made that decision to say, you know something, I go put down little money and buy one piece of land. Or I go get one loan and buy one piece of land. By the time you come around or your pitney then come around, they have the piece of land so they can build something on it. So your bloodline, your posterity going forward, they could have that benefit of some family member went through that sacrifice, put aside, trying to be joyful all the time, and then them generation come in and suffer. Somebody put aside their life so that their future generation can flourish and take shame out of them eye. That is what we have to look at. I don't want my children growing up looking at Jamaica the way I see it. I want my children come and see something totally different, where they don't have to be afraid day nor night. That is what motivates me to do this. Right? So, we can allow our country to be better for us and our children in the future. Exactly. So, when we look at why we do certain things and why we actually put things in place, it is not necessarily for our benefit. Yes, we should enjoy some of it now. And that is why we're in this process. That is why we are putting these things forward. Complaining will not help. Picketing will not help. Violence will not help. Because believe it or not, we are an unarmed society. So this is the reason why the police force is so effective. Most of us are unarmed. We have no combat skills. We have no defense. Even our houses, we hardly have any protection. Many of us don't have any grills. Many of us don't have any grills around our windows. Many of us don't have concrete houses. So the government itself, the police themselves, they can violate your rights. They can enter your property and do whatever they want, and they can leave. And the little savings that you have, you might have to hire an attorney, and you may not get that savings back. It is not guaranteed that just because you get an attorney, you will get restitution. So what kind of security do we have? Now, imagine an armed nation. You think anybody will run up in a way? You think anybody unannounced come kick off door running on away? Yeah, sleep with a thing under your pillow or in a place where you can access it easily. Right? And if somebody don't announce themselves and run in pan you, what you gonna do? So I am not inciting violence, but I am saying if you are to protect your life and your property, what else can you do? You cannot always be a victim. You can't always be a victim. We cannot always have these accidents going on. So, if the people are unarmed, one way to solve the problem is to disarm the police. Well, that is one way, but the problem is we can't do that when we have so many unaccounted for arms within society. It would take a very long time to get to a stage where that is practical. But if we institute rules to get rid of people who are found to be doing certain things, then we don't have to worry about guns. We don't have to worry about arms. We don't have to worry about, a lot of the things that we have going on. And again, with the new constitution, we would have a completely different police force. Accountability would not be an issue. Accountability would not be an issue, right? So, at the end of the day, again, we are not anti-police. I am not anti-police, but I am anti-lawlessness. I don't think anyone in society should be immune from prosecution, immune from arrest, immune from penalties when you commit unlawful acts. Everybody have to be on the same page. The rules can't apply to me and then it don't apply to you. It just don't make no sense. None at all. Regardless of what we want to hide behind to say, oh, we have a lot of crime, we have a lot of this. Fine, but you can't break the law to enforce it. That in itself don't make no sense. So I am of the view that whoever breaks the law, from the command all the way down, needs to be prosecuted. You can't have a commander issuing commands and those you are commanding are not obeying what you are saying, and then everybody just sit down and drink a beer at the end of the day. How would that work? This is why the power needs to return to the people. We cannot leave power in the hands of a few. So, that being said, the constitution itself that is being drafted removes the entire government structure and puts in a government council. So that way you don't have any single individual making any decision on anything. If a decision needs to be made, it is made by a council, a set of people who are elected by the people. I'm not breaking any law, but order is needed. Yes, order is needed, and the only reason we don't have order is because the consequences are too lenient. The court systems take too long. Justice is not swift. The punishments are not in line with keeping corruption out. A lot of problems. But once we have these penalties instituted, we can almost guarantee crime goes down by minimum 80% in 1 year. Minimum. Because once somebody see somebody go up on a rope weekly, when you see people go up on a rope weekly, and when they come down, they have no life in them. I think that is going to shake up some people. I think nobody ever really want to take a chance there. At a certain point, when you start to say anybody can go up on a rope, when you start to say anybody can get them finger slap off, when you say everybody who get convicted, them a get punishment, and then on top of that, if you don't end up on a rope, you go out there go work. You know, come back a road just so. You go out there go work, you help rebuild society that you try to tear down in the first place. Once we have those things in society, man, I don't think we're going to have much of any issues. Crime and violence and them something gone down minimum 80%. Me now ask. All the countries who have instituted serious criminal penalties, you see crime plummet, almost non-existent in some cases. I listen to the scenario, what kind of sentence would under 18 years get for crimes, for serious assault and so forth? Now that is something that is going to be added to the draft. If a child is below the age of 10. Again, these are science-based suggestions. A suggestion was made that children below the age of 10, they would be confined to a juvenile facility, right? They would get psychological help, and it would be determined whether or not this individual is having some kind of psychological issue or what the case is to have caused that crime. If the individual is over 10 years old, meaning 11 and up, they would be prosecuted as an adult, because the brain, the development of the brain as it concerns society, once you get past the age of 9, children start understanding the dangers and the crimes and the penalties of society. Okay? So, there again, we have to understand the dynamics that we're talking about here. Let me give you an example why those things would become so serious for these young individuals who are out there doing certain things. We are not going to create an immunity barrier for any class of society, whether it be by age, religion, or anything else. Now, first things first, remember the Constitution is going to be taught in schools. By the time, from primary school all the way up, right? So these individuals are going to be cognizant that these are criminal penalties. If you commit a crime, this is what you're going to face. So it's not going to be something new. It's not going to be something where nobody knows what's going on and then all of a sudden you face these criminal penalties. Crime is a crime regardless, but it is going to be taught in schools going from primary and up. The second thing is, when we have children who don't have extracurricular activities, they are roaming the streets, they don't have any purpose, they don't have any kind of interest, they are being influenced by groups, and that is how gangs are formed, As them said, the devil find work for idle hands. The children who don't have the parents at home, the parents and their work and all of that, them come home from school and now they have all this free time. What am I going to do? Am I going to find other children or some kind of group or some inclusion, right? Some kind of group inclusion somewhere. So we are going to change and fix that. When school is over, we are going to institute institutions where children can go and learn extracurricular things, do extracurricular activities, have playtime, have centers where they can go and expand on what it is that they're interested in. So we would take away that that idle hand kind of situation where children are just out there with all this free time, bored and want something to do, right? For example, we can have music institutions. You want to learn how to play a drum, how to write lyrics, how to sing, how to this, a music institution, right? In every parish. So, you're done school, you can go to the music institution. Fine. You have one next institution where them can learn a certain type of skill. You can go over here, so they can just play. If they just want to play, make them go play. A lot of us, are of the idea that too much screen time, too much computer, too much TV, too much this, too much that. You have to realize, everyone has a different mindset. Everyone is gravitating towards different things. Right? Sports clubs and things like that. Everyone has some kind of inherent ability. So you can't tell Pitney say, you have too much screen time, you watch too much TV, you play too much video game. What if they want to become a computer programmer? What if they want to become a game designer? What if they want to become a YouTuber? What if they want to do any of these digital things? What you want them to do? You yourself cannot play with them or interact with them 24/7. Right? So when we have these institutions to garner their attention and foster their need for skill or their need for inclusion, their need for elevation. We take away that aspect of society that allow these gangs to proliferate. You get it? So now, when we have these things in place and you still have these little individuals engaging in some kind of crime, they will be fully aware not only of the consequences, but also of what they are doing. So if and when they get convicted, they do the crime, they get the punishment. It's that simple. It's no longer the time for the crime. It is now the punishment for the crime. Right? Right. All of these different things, arts, crafts, IT skills, etc., we cannot be so narrow-minded. You see a lot of things that we see on the internet where I see in this report where they were saying that children who get too much screen time, it is affecting their brain, it is affecting their brain chemistry and this and that, whatever. We have not had social media that long to be making some of these determinations. We cannot determine long-term effects when literally, you know, Facebook, Instagram and something, they are pretty recent. So what kind of long-term study have you done in order to say too much screen time is bad? Right? Again, obviously, we don't want every single pitney sit down there on YouTube just a watch. We're talking about action skills, not just sitting down watching and scrolling and laughing. Yes, that is a distraction, but at the same time, it has to be measured. You know, 3 hours a day. 1 hour when you come in the evening, then you get up and you go do something, or you go have your playtime or whatever. Then, you know, after dinner, you have one next 1 hour and you go to your bed. Right? You do your homework, you go to your bed. You mix it up. You cannot sit there and don't allow children to be children. You cannot sit there and restrict them in such a way that they don't have any outlet to do anything. A lot of parents, or let me say some parents, they are of the view that, you know, the phone and the computer are not good for children. It's not good for your eyes, it's not good for this, not good for that. You know how much children out there, again, I'm not advocating for it, and I'm just giving examples. You know how much children out there become YouTube stars, become TikTok stars, become all kind of different things. And you see, because the parents sit down there and I say, you can't sit down on phone and make money, you can't sit down on phone and learn this, you can't sit down on phone and do that. Those children now start resenting their parents. Some of them, they do what they do and they are able to help their family. They can go buy a house, they can know, you know, just focus on the basic utilities and have to worry about mortgage and them something. Without them having that basic little skill or whatever they were doing to make that money, it would not have been possible. Some children, you know, they are able to learn online, do online classes and all that. What are you going to say? Too much screen time? Are you going to say too much screen time to one child who is there taking one IT course or taking one game programming course or whatever? You have to be measured with some of these things. Right? So, you know, that is the idea behind these things. Alright, scientists, you're up. So you want to join in the box. Alright, look like that was a fat finger. So yes, it has to be measured, and also, again, the institutions within, the social institutions within society would be expanded. We would not have these hoops for people to jump through to actually access services, you know, to be a part of nation building, to be a part of skills, skills learning, skills teaching, and all these different types. A lot of programs are included in the draft to allow for an actual development of society. We can actually grow as a society and not just be relying upon what was already there. Because really and truly, in our current society, we don't have much developmental goals. Much of what we are taught in schools is to become a worker bees and to go and beg a job. We don't have much skill fostering. We don't have much innovation fostering. We don't have institutions out there to allow people to expand on what they may know or what they may be interested in. And this comes back to another research study where someone you'll be surprised, the US government, they fund a lot of things that are very questionable. But here is a research study, right? Where the question was, as it concerns a genius, right? Or someone who is highly skilled in a field, is that person really a genius or a skilled individual in a field? Or is it just that enough people were not exposed to the same material or the same access to resources? That is the only way you can truly measure if someone is a genius, right? It's just like it's just like swimming. You will have someone who is really good, they are making world records. But how many individuals have access to that skill? Right? So you can't say that person is so good, he's a genius, when you don't even have 100,000 people who were exposed to that kind of competitive nature of swimming. Same thing with the piano. If someone is not exposed and given access to the resource to play the piano, learn how some of the different things work on the piano, how can you say someone like Mozart or whosoever else is a genius? You can't. It's like, yes, it's unique. Yes, he was good. But you can't call people genius when you don't have everyone having access to the same thing. It makes sense? If everyone else is locked out and only a few have access to certain things, how can you call somebody a genius? They just know how to do the thing. It's that simple. All right, so that is going to change in our society. All of those things are going to change. When we all have access to these resources, we don't have to be competing for jobs. We don't have to be competing for resources. We don't have to be competing for basic living. We don't have to be competing to enjoy life. We don't have to be competing with other communities. So many different things in society where we are just competing. We are competing as if it is limited. Our resources are not limited. If our resources were limited, when I get to me, I say, our resources are not limited. If our resources were limited, we would have seen it in population decline. Food regrows. Water spring up again. So what exactly is limited? If you have enough money, you have enough food. So that means it is just right. It is just the access that is limited. It is not the source. If the source is limited, then that's a different story. That is when we would actually have a limitation. But access is artificial. Excuse me. Access to resources is artificial. So it is not something that we can say, oh, we have limited resource, we have to conserve this, we have to conserve that, we have to put this aside, we have to... No. Our resources are renewable. Water is renewable. Food is renewable. Energy is renewable now. Everything is renewable. So we don't have a limitation on these things. It is the artificial restriction and access to these things that cause us to go into a panic, that cause us to keep struggling, and all of these different things. And those things were changed under the new constitution. We cannot have artificial scarcity. That is a money-making thing. If we ourselves are profiting from ourselves, how does that make sense? Artificial scarcity is only for the few. It cannot be for the collective. So at the end of the day, we have to determine what is important to us as a people. We cannot leave everyone else to do that kind of work. This is why we say, disband everything, form a new government, and run society how it's supposed to run. Nobody will have any major responsibility except the people. We vote for everything major and call it a day. That means what? It is we who are going to live with our decisions, not the decision of others. Right? So, all of those things and more are in the Constitution and are going to be added. The part with the minor punishment that is to be added, we have, we're just going to go over some of the suggestions that are coming up in the next draft. We have swimming pools in every community, right, where everyone learns how to swim. For those of you who haven't been here before, we have mandatory training, defensive training from primary school going up. So we will have a trained and armed society, reducing the need for police, reducing the need for security forces, right? We have can't talk about that yet. Content and intellectual protection. We have some of that already in the draft, but that is going to be refined, right? We have another suggestion for criminal penalties, which is going to be included. We have rehabilitation to rid mental health issues, right? So when we have mental health issues within society, we will have institutions and professionals who will work with these individuals to resolve their mental issues, right? There are a lot of individuals who don't have an outlet right now to talk to anyone, you know, to better themselves as far as mental anguish is concerned, mental issues, mental problems, mental incapacity. And it is also fostering an area within society where individuals are taken advantage of. So we want to remove these elements of society that is causing societal decline. You know, sometimes we have situations in society, for example, vulnerable individuals, right? And these individuals don't get the help and they continue to decline and decline and decline. And people who are mentally challenged, they are more vulnerable to abuse. They are vulnerable to others carrying out criminal actions or criminal acts on them, right? So we have to have institutions, we have to have helplines, we have to have resources available for those who cannot assist themselves, those who don't feel like they are ready for the full responsibilities of society. So yes, we would have a mental health line. Professionals, you see, when we think about it, you know, we have problems as a people, right? The purpose of government is to manage the general affairs of the people. Scorpion King, lawful, welcome. The purpose of government is to manage the general welfare of the people. So that means that they're not supposed to do nothing on their own. They are not supposed to be doing anything without the people asking for it. Does that make sense? The government don't exist by itself. It is not formed by itself. It is the people who come together and say, yes, we want a set of people who just work for we. Right? So that being the case, the people have the power to create institutions, to create offices, to create bodies, to create different things independent of the government. And that is one of the things missing today. If we have the government creating institutions, that is a violation of the delegation of powers principle. You should not be creating institutions without the authority of the people. I'm not saying that they are doing that because you don't realize what is happening when you vote. So that vote is doing a lot of things that you don't realize. So under the new constitution, that would cease. Government can't create no new institution. It is only the people who would be able to create these new institutions. And once these institutions are created, the government has no power over it. The government's duty, again, them have them specific job, and that them are going to do. When the people create an institution, the people are going to create the resources and the people necessary. The people offices or the positions necessary to run that organizations, like the investigatory body. The investigatory body is going to have such broad powers they can run in by anybody. Any institutions, any corporation, any legal fiction that is being run in society, the investigatory agency, the auditing agency, they can go into that business or that institution at any time. Go audit what them do, go see what their day-to-day operational practices are, to go see their books, to go and dig up their reports and all them. That is what we need. We can't have an investigatory agency subject to anyone other than the people. So if them say, all right, a time for go over here, so no notice, just like the FBI, then just run in and go tell everybody, stop the way I do. Go figure out which computer have what, which server have what, which this have that. Boom, they get a copy of it, then look through and see what go on. You ask the question them what them need and them out. Plain and simple. We can't have people prepare. Oh, mercy. We cannot have people preparing for a visit from an auditor general or from an investigatory agency. Yeah, like, people, when you hear that sound, it is just like the police alerting the criminals that, you know, say, we are come search your house. Make sure you're the home. Does it make sense? It doesn't. So, when we talk about these institutions who get prior notice and then you have people going in there all, you know, willy-nilly and like, them don't hide and burn up everything long time. TikTok police, you're up. TikTok police, lawful, welcome. TikTok police in our pockets. Yeah, so the people have the right to create independent institutions. And this is the only way we can have separation of powers. We cannot have a government body policing itself. The government should do government business. The policing should be done by a policing agency. The administrative should be done by administrative agency. Everything should be separate. We can't have none of them communicate, none of them collaborate unless it is in the context of some kind of crime and only limited to their own function. We can't send people go hide and go destroy evidence and all them. Even though we have a public record system, that would be instituted, right? It still does not justify anyone alerting anyone about a possible audit or that the investigatory agency are come and add them something. Ridiculous. So we would also be an armed nation, right? So as private people, we should be armed. How can we protect life and property unarmed? The current Jamaica Constitution Order in Council 1962 says we have a right to protect our lives, our property, and our family. How do we protect? Remember, you know, protection is before you have damage. It's just like you put on a condom. Protection is before. Protection will come after. Like where you get it? Protection is to protect you from harm. Is to stop harm from happening. Is to prevent damage. So if we are to protect ourselves, how can we do so if we are unarmed? The criminals them armed, the police them armed, the people are unarmed. That is our current reality. Does it make sense to anyone? How do you protect without being armed? I start talking about this other day, recently, the FLA in a hot water. You know, I saw something about that. I didn't really go and read all the details, right? But again, if we're even going to have a registry for firearms, a registry for registered owners, right? Again, all right. Somebody asks about what if someone had a firearm under the previous administration, right? Let's say you had a firearm and you did not register it. What would happen now under the new constitution if you decide that you're just going to go and you just want to register it, right? You want it to be lawful that you register your firearm and so forth. You go and register it. At no point in our history, in any human history, is owning a weapon a crime. It is only in our current history. It is only in our current history, over the past 50 or 60 years, that it was made a crime to own a firearm. When I get that? Only in a recent history is owning a firearm without licensing it a crime. Again, all of this, if under the current constitution, if it is not involved in a crime, it was not proven to be involved in a crime, you go and you register it. Case closed. Remember, you know, a law cannot be retroactive. You cannot be prosecuted under something that was passed. Unless it is proven, you know. If it is proven, that is a different thing. But if nothing was proven against you or the item or the arms, you move forward. You move forward. Know that it is registered to you. Now, in the future, if something happened after you register it, different story that. Right? If you have one and you had, listen, you're going to have a period of time, you know. Let's say we have a 6-month period of time Always say, listen, if you have a firearm, make sure you register it. 6 months are even too much time. But just to be fair for everybody, if you're deep on the island and you have your firearm, bring it in and come get it registered. Because if you have something that is unregistered, it is going to be deemed to be something that you want to use illicitly. Something that you don't want someone to find out you own it or whatever the case may be. Right? So if you are found in that case where you have wide opportunity to own one and you decide that, yeah man, I have one, but me don't want to register that one here because maybe I want to use it in a different case or whatever the case may be. And your problem that you can't blame nobody after you have the chance to clear your name, to clear everything, clear your piece and have your piece of your yard. You can't blame nobody. And again, if you're going to own a firearm, it has to have a lockbox, something that you can use to secure it. Because if it is, for example, that a minor access your firearm and they cause some damage, you are now implicated as well. You see it? So it has a chain effect. Everyone who have a piece, you have to have some kind of secure lock for it. You get it? So you make everybody responsible for their action. You make everybody have access to protect themselves. Somebody who decide for running upon somebody or to do some nefarious act, we not worry about that because the law is going to be in place where either them get put on the string and hang up in a daylight or them go work it off and them get other punishment on top of it. If somebody take your thing and it registered to you and somebody else use it, you get the punishment. The two I get the punishment. You see me? No man, we're not charging for no registration. That would be ridiculous. It is a right to protect your life, your family, and your property. So we can't charge people to come register. That in itself is ridiculous. We're not trying to create streams of revenue. You get what I'm saying? We would, again, right now we don't have any transparency. Right now we don't know how much money we have. All we are here say, the government is managing our funds. The government is managing the projects that are necessary for society this year. We're managing the budget. We're managing this, managing that. How much money we have? How much money we have? You see it? So, all of these things, if something is tied to a right, we cannot now charge a fee. We cannot now create arbitrary process for you to exercise your right. It is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. For if you say me have a right, how you now create a condition for me to exercise my right? That means it's not a right then. Of course, there are other ways for the government to make money other than extorting the citizens. That's what I say. If we know how much money we have, we figure out if we even need to do anything. You see, that is the crux of it, Do we actually need to do anything based on the amount of funds we have and what we allocate to do our own projects? We are too focused on the wrong things. If we know how much money we have, we can now create budgets. We can now say, all right, if necessary, right, we limit our projects yearly. We don't need to be spending just to create expenditure and all of this foolishness. If we have excess funds, we find ways to utilize it. For example, like we said before, if we see that we have excess funds, right, we can create a program where we say, all right, if you work, let's say 2 hours a day, 2 times 52, that 365. 2 times 52, 104. I don't get 365. 2 times 52, 52 weeks, right? So you work 2 hours every week for the year, right? And you are eligible for a certain amount. Let's say $1 million at the end of the year. I think that is much better. I think that is much better than us finding a way to spend that extra $2 or $3 billion. I think everyone should just get $1 million. If you work in society and you contribute the 2 hours a week for the 52 weeks, you deserve $1 million. I think that's how it's supposed to work. If you don't want to participate, that's fine. It's optional, right? Could firearms be registered at local police station? No. We would have a specific office in every parish where you can go and like for example a tax office. You just go there. You have a special department there. You know they check they check the firearm against some kind of database, whatever it may be. If it is not found to be, you know, something that was involved in some other incident or crime, and it is cleared, right? It is not belonging to someone else. Then it is registered under your name with your ID, and that's it. You're out of there. You don't need to fill out no heap of form. You don't need to fill out nothing at all. Nothing we're not supposed to fill out. The government have the information already, so why are we filling out forms? No, you go there with your ID, check it, make sure everything is good, register it under your name, you walk out, you're done. 10 minutes. You're not supposed to do that for more than that. Once you got the window, that is the process. That is what we're supposed to have. They do that to try to say Jamaica is poor. I don't know. And they need to know how you get it. No, I don't think so. Why is it relevant how you get it? Why is it relevant how we get a firearm? You see, in other countries, you can simply transfer a firearm from an individual to an individual. It is just like any other property. You just transfer the title. So regardless of where you get it from, as long as it was not involved in a crime, you're clear to register it. Should be that simple. We don't need a bureaucratical process just for registration. Same thing with licensing of anything. You should be able to go, well, the firearm, you definitely have to go in. Like a car, them something there, where you are going to office ago, where you are going a long line ago. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Unless it is the first time you're registering the thing. You don't need to go in no office. Everything is going to be online, on a computer. You can do it from your phone or whatever the case may be. If it's under your name, you just log in with your ID, you pay, you're done. You're not supposed to go through this long, drawn out, sit down and wait hours, long line. They might ask you a question about people who dead long time and all them foolishness. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. For what? Especially if you have done it one time already. Why every agency needs to do the same thing again? The bank, the tax office, the this, the that. For what? They all have access to the same information. So why are we going through the same process year after year after year after year? Wayne, Lawful, welcome. It's needed to frustrate the people. You know, you might have a point there. If we not go down the road there, we can't talk about that here, so. But it's possible. It's possible. Because it just don't make sense. You see, the worst part about it, there is no outlet for us to ask about these things. Who are we going to ask? Who can we sit down with and say, what is for? Who come up with this? Who write the law? Hmm? If Jamaica doesn't produce firearms, where would you go to buy them? Just like we buy anything else, the government would simply stockpile them. We would have, a procurement process. We contact a nation, whether it be US, China, or wherever, and we purchase them and we sell them. Right? That's simple. It is like any other property, I mean, people think of it as this special thing. It's really not. Again, a firearm is used in case of emergencies, in case of dire need. It is not an everyday tool. So, in that case, it is, I guess, somewhat special. But when we talk about accessing protection, just like a machete, you go to the store, you go buy one, right? You don't ask nobody, yo, really need to have a machete? No. Right? We will have one in the town of every parish. So you just go down there, you can buy one, you have to keep it in the case until you get home, and you do what you want with it. Right? Excuse me. The same thing with concealed carry. You want to bring it on the road, or whatever the case may be, you have the option of doing that. You just don't want it to just be so open in the public, right? It has to be concealed. So you don't want children to be looking at it like this is something so cool, right? So again, we need some kind of restriction there. We don't want it just open in the public, so where anybody can access it. We want it in such a way that you have it as your protection, but it is not a brandishing thing. Yeah, show it off on your side and rate. No. Yes, it is secured in a location and you can access it if you need it. It is not a brandishing tool. Because at that point, it's not going to make no sense either. Almost everybody are going to have them piece. So what is so special about yours? It's commonplace at that point. Right? So we have to protect ourselves. We have to protect our nation. We have to allow for the protection of people and property. Justin, Lawful, welcome. So, a lot of the red tape that we have regarding ownership and these requirements of, you have to prove this and prove how long you live here, so where you need it for, and all of these ridiculous things. I can't, something? Me nah go downplay anything, because a man might say, yo, me need if you go take care of one thing, Literally, I can assume people are going to say that because the things I hear come out of people's mouth. I would not be surprised if somebody I say, yo, me need this, figure do one job. I wouldn't be surprised. Right? And that is why when you are acquiring one for the first time, if you already have one, it's a different story. But if you are purchasing one, yes, you would go through an interview process, right? To make sure you're not mentally unstable, you don't have any psychological issues in your background and things like that. But beyond that, you are fully responsible for any consequence that comes as a result of acquiring one. And that is how we have to look at it. We can't just be barring people just because you don't have a business or you don't have enough, whatever the case may be. As long as you are mentally stable and you are deemed to be an adult, you go ahead and you purchase one. You get your case, you lock it up, and you have your protection. That's simple. Right? So, was the other piece I wanted to get into. And we talk about the limitations of law, right? We don't want politicians creating no law. It is not beneficial to have someone who is created, your office is created by law. Exactly, Alison. You can't stop people from committing crimes. You can only create punishments, right? For those who are exercising a public office, their office is temporary. How can we allow a temporary individual to create something permanent that affects our lives? It's like you create a robot and the robot now say you have to obey what you say. You see how that don't make no sense? You create something like a government office, and now the government office is now creating laws that govern you. And you don't have no say. You can't suggest nothing. You can't reject it. You not even get to see it before it get released. And then once it goes into law, you have no power against it. Now you have to go to court in order to challenge it. And before you can challenge it, you have to now have some reason to prove that it will affect you negatively or violate your rights. That is what we currently have. How does any of this make sense? You create something, now the creation is controlling you. Changes and amendments are only to be suggested by the people. Cannot be suggested by a government or public official. The job of the public official is to draft the amendment. Once they draft the amendment, it is then presented back to the people, and then the people would vote for that change to be added to the Constitution. The Constitution is going to be protected, meaning no provision can be removed. You can only add. Amend to add to it. You cannot remove anything. And that is one way to protect the integrity and the intent of the Constitution in the first place. Because many of you may not realize that since we've had the Order in Council 1962 as a constitution, there are many amendments that repealed sections of that constitution, removed it, made it no longer in force and effect. So, if we're going to have a constitution that is to protect the people, we cannot allow alterations that are going to remove provisions that are there as a protection mechanism. We can only add more protections or more changes necessary to allow for the continuation of the Constitution. And it has to be consistent with what is already there. So you couldn't have a provision that says, the people can now make suggestions to remove a section. Like that would not be consistent with a constitution like this, right? So it would not be valid. Right? So we would remove the legislative ability from public officials and only allow the public to make suggestions on what they would like to add, if anything, to the law. The Constitution would also be protected in the sense that once any amendment has been made to the Constitution or adding anything, no more changes would be possible for 10 years. right? So the Constitution would have a cooling off period where no additions could be added to the Constitution for that period of time. So that would allow society to experience and figure out whether or not we want to add anything else or we want to leave it as is, right? Again, the courts would be completely overhauled. We would change the names of the courts. We would have additional courts. And one additional court would be the Special People's Court, right? And the reason for that is we cannot have public officials judging themselves. So only the people would have the power to judge public officials and sentence them. So whenever we have a public official who is accused of a crime, the people themselves, the layman, would form a court, and those public officials would be tried by the people and sentenced, if they are found guilty, by the people. So that way you don't have any kind of bureaucratical shielding or protection of a class within society, right? Then you would have 2 courts of appeals, specific criminal courts and specific civil courts and specific equity courts, right? And only those courts that are established by the constitutions would exist, meaning the other courts cannot create lower courts, right? Only what is in the Constitution could exist. And unlike what we have today, we would have a procedure manual for each court. So you would know step by step what you would need to do at every stage within the court process. You would not have any guesswork. We would remove the guesswork from the processes and procedures necessary to start a case, go through the motions and finish it. We would also have fixed time frames for cases. No more would we have a case that goes on beyond a year or 2. Right? Absolutely. Family court we would have family law. Family court would be in the civil realm. So yes, we have family law procedures, family law sections in the Constitution as well. We have criminal law and public order principles, and outlining the elements of a crime, etc., etc. Standards of proof, categories of crime, all of those things are outlined in detail. So nobody can say, well, me never know this in a foreign language, this I use unwritten laws and all. No, everything is in here. Sentencing guidelines, determination of harm, literally almost everything, right? The other thing we've done is we've turned traffic regulation into an administrative agency. So that way, the police is not involved in traffic matters anymore. Traffic matters would be a civil matter. So the police only gets involved when crime is reported. That's it. That's their only function. So if that be the case, the police no longer have the power to just stop cars. That would be a completely separate agency, right? And the administrative actions, in the case of accidents or crashes, then the police would be called to take a police report. But and that is somewhat in the realm of possible criminality, right? So you would have a forensic team come out and you would have the police. The forensic team would ensure that the scene is not contaminated, and the police would take the report. That would be the extent of what they do. The forensic team would gather evidence and take a look at the statements, a copy of the statement got by the police, and they would do a whole thing to determine whether or not there was negligence or the breathalyzer and all them something. But the police should not have any administrative duties like that, where they are asking you certain questions and that an investigator should really be asking, right? They would simply take the report. That's all they would do. It would be a completely different agency that would handle the evidence portion of a crash or an accident, right? And once that is in place, then again, all of these different aspects of policing would be focused on crime, and that is what the police forces really should be for, just handling crime. The other administrative agencies, they can refer things to the police, and where it is the case that the police decides that someone needs to be arrested, before they are placed in any jail cell or anything like that, the individual would have to be placed in front of a judge that would be on remote duty. So for example, someone is arrested by the police and brought to a police station. That individual would sit in a room with a computer and a camera, and they would talk to a judge. The police would be there, the arresting officer, and the individual would be there, and the judge would determine if that individual can be granted bail immediately or if that individual deserves to be in a cell. So now you create a double accountability. The judge is making the decision, but it is based on the arrest. So if any of them are wrong, whether the constable or, well, not the constable at that point, it's going to be whether the police or the judge, if they are wrong, they are both going to face criminal penalties. You get how serious that is now? If someone is confined and they are confined wrongfully, those who confined him wrongfully are now going to be implicated criminally, because now you have violated someone's rights at the highest level. You have confined them where they cannot exercise no rights whatsoever. So we have to create severe punishment for those. So only in specific instances where someone is violent or it appears that they have committed an egregious crime, that is when they have to be confined, because you don't want them to create other harm within society. But beyond those things, someone should simply be granted bail immediately. You take away their ID or you get some kind of security and let them be on their way. Once you have that security in place, they have to show up to court, or then you can have a warrant issued and the police go and get them. But other than that, people should not be sitting in a cell waiting for charges. That is unlawful. I worry about motorcycle drivers that don't wear helmets. Could that be made law? It could save lives. No. If someone decides, they don't want to wear a helmet, we can't force them to be safe. Now, the state has an obligation to enforce safety for children. But when you are an adult, the state cannot force you. It's just like seatbelt. People, we have to think about these things. Everyone has a right to their own safety. We as a public or as a collective don't have the right to require someone to wear a helmet. We don't have the right to require someone to wear a seatbelt. We don't have the right to do anything to anyone else. We should just respect that someone is not harming us. Right? Seatbelt, it cannot be a law. Some people cannot wear the seatbelt. For some people, they have to have a special seatbelt for a specific purpose. For children, that is different. We have to ensure that children are protected. They don't have the mental facility to be responsible. However, an adult, if me decide say, me no want a helmet, who are you to force me to wear one? Is that harming the public? That is the question, you know. So if we're going to create a general law, right? Or we say we want to promote safety, fine. Let us put that in a promotion. Put it on TV, put it in a pamphlet, put it in something. But if me decide say me want to endanger my life, as long as it is not endangering the life of someone else, I should be free to do that. It's just like a knife. If I decide to cut my own hand, you can't stop me? No. But if me live alone or me want to do that in my free time or whatever, you know. You know, if I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, I wouldn't be here today. Accident put me in ICU. It wasn't my fault. That is fine. Like I said, everyone has the option to protect themselves. But if it is not endangering someone else, we cannot force everyone to do it. I hope you're getting what we're getting at. The point of the law is to prevent criminality or to punish criminality. Right? Yes, children would have to wear seatbelts. That would be mandatory because, again, we have to protect children. They don't have the mental faculties to be mature enough to know that they have to be protected. Right? Until they become aware and become adults, they have to be protected. Right? We have the duty to protect them until they can think for themselves. But as adults, we can't force everybody to do that. Because think about it. You don't wear a seatbelt. Right? Let's say you don't wear a seatbelt and you get into a car crash. Let's say you get injured seriously. Did that affect someone else? Yes, it is bad. Yes, it could possibly save a life. I am not negating that. But let's say someone is not wearing a seatbelt and they damage themselves. Is that a crime? That is the question. If it is a crime, it has to be proven, it has to be provable in a court of law that they intentionally didn't wear the seatbelt and it caused harm to someone else. No, it would not. Would not wearing a seatbelt have any impact on insurance? It sounds like you need to take a look at the Constitution to see what is in there thus far. But insurance is completely separate. If it is negligence, because again, are you creating danger by not wearing a seatbelt? We have to take the emotions out of it, you know. We have to take the emotions out of it. Yes, we hope to preserve life. But if someone decides they don't want to, all right, let's say there's a law that says you have to wear a seatbelt. Let us play devil's advocate. Let's say there's a law that says you have to wear a seatbelt. Does that stop someone from taking it off? No. Just like there's a law on speeding, does it stop someone from going a certain speed? No. If someone decides, you know what, yo, me I go 110 on the North Coast Highway or Highway 2000, it's not going to stop the individual from doing something. So, what is the point of the law? What is the point of a law that creates criminality where there is no victim, there is no danger, there is no actual damage done. Are we endangering the public by doing these things? That's the question. If we are not, then it can be a crime. It is not supposed to be made a law. But we have become so used to these things where they come up with excuses and they say, well, it's for public safety. Everything is for public safety. We can't hide behind public safety and just restrict everybody. Soon then go and tell us you need to wear 2 seatbelts, one across each other. Click, click. If you don't wear it, you're getting a fine. That is not a law. That is revenue generation. That is public wealth extraction. Because it is not endangering someone else to not wear a seatbelt. What if someone is speeding and crashes into the back of another car they couldn't control? Yeah, what about it? It happens now. We have the laws now. Right. Absolutely, it is negligence. But that is not as a result of the seatbelt. It is not. If someone is speeding excessively and they lose control of the car, or they cannot control the car at the speed that they are going and they cause an accident, it is negligence and you are prosecuted as such. But speeding in and of itself is not a crime, because again, if you are in control of the car and you don't have an accident, is it a crime? That is where it's at. So again, a crime cannot be potential. It has to be action based. It has to be something that was done. So the law itself is defining the limits on what crime is and what we can actually do to a certain boundary. Yes, Alison, there is a law for careless and reckless or dangerous driving. Yes. But that in and of itself, yes, is a crime. You have a disregard and you're, endangering other people. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so that is that with the draft. We still have a few more points to add. What was the other thing that was on here? So we have the rehabilitation of mental health issues. We have the penalty for children to add. We have content and intellectual protection. We have swimming pools for all schools. Oh, we have a suggestion for fostering authors, right? Fostering authors. So people who want to become authors, people who are great thinkers, people who are intellectuals, we should have an institution to allow them to flourish on their skill or their intellectual ability. So that is going to be included in the draft as well. Oh, there's another suggestion on national border security, where we don't have enough border security around the island. So that would also be implemented. We already have the auditing of the church. What else we had? We had those already. And what was this one? And we had that one already. We had that one. And oh, there is one last provision that I forgot to mention in the citizenship section. Let's see what page that is. Page 148. Citizenship. So let's take a look at this other section. So, there are many countries that allow visitors by visa, right? So, we would implement a similar process because Jamaica don't have a strict visa policy, right? We allow just about anyone to come and vacation and do all of that. However, proof of citizenship, refugees, no, you can pass it. Hold on. You are a citizen. Citizenship by naturalization. Right. Now, this section, which is citizenship by naturalization, it was updated as well on how people can become citizens of Jamaica by naturalization. Now, as a naturalized citizen, you still don't have full native citizen rights, right? However, if you have children who are born native citizens, then they would have full rights. For example, non-citizens or naturalized citizens cannot own land directly, right? They would not be entitled to national retirement benefits. They could not participate in government office, and they cannot control any major infrastructure or essential societal function, right? So they still would be restricted as it relates to national matters and land and so forth. However, if you have a child that is born here, then they would have those rights, right? The application fee to be a naturalized citizen would be $1,000 US or equivalent. Again, this would change, I guess, depending on the times, right? Dual citizenship, loss of citizenship, voluntary renunciation, right to vote, duties of citizen, non-citizen, equal opportunity. It looks like intruders. Hold on, immigration and border control. Okay, here we go. So it's actually the immigration section, immigration and border control. Right, so visa requirements and visitor entry. Entry may be granted to a visitor after approval of a visa application and payment of the required visa fee. Applicants shall satisfy the following visa requirements: complete a visa request application, complete an affidavit of intent of travel purpose, complete a family and emergency contact affidavit, complete an asset, employment, and local presence affidavit, pay the visa application fee of $500 USD or equivalent. A business visa attracts an additional fee of $1,000 USD, and an IP visa or an important person visa attracts an additional fee of $500,000 US covering all inclusive packages stay up to 5 years. Right, we're gonna get into this a little bit later, but for those rich individuals who want to come to Jamaica and they want to spend whatever time they want to go to all the attractions. They want to have a full Jamaica experience, unrestricted, they can have that privilege, where we would set up institutions to accommodate this, right? Once the requirements are submitted, the application shall be processed within 30 days. False statements on any document is considered fraud, and such application will be denied, barring entry for a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of 2 years, depending on severity. Visa duration shall be a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of 5 years. Right, so depending on the type of entry that you are requesting, this condition of the time would be imposed on that visa. Categories of visitor entry. Visitor entry may be granted by visa for residence, work, tourism, study, temporary visit, business, or IP, which is important person visa. Residency. A non-citizen may obtain lawful residency. Residency requires registration, compliance with laws, statutory provisional periods of 1, 3, and there should be 10 years of good standing. I don't know why it has a 1 there, but this should be 10. 1, 3, and 10 years of good standing. Residency status must be recorded. So, for example, someone who is looking to be a citizen or a naturalized citizen at some point, they would go through this process of residency check requirements, where they stay in the country for a period of time. They would have to check in with the immigration agency over these 3 different periods of time, and then once they reach the 10-year period, then they would be eligible to apply for naturalization status, which would give them naturalized citizenship. Right? Work authorization. Non-citizens may work only with lawful authorization, right? Just like any other country. You can't just go there and start work. You have to have work authorization. Work authorization must be recorded, specify type of work, and verifiable, and time limited. Denial of entry. Entry shall be denied if identity cannot be verified, false information is presented or provided, there is evidence of criminal activity, or entry poses documented risk to the nation. Removal or deportation. A non-citizen may be removed if unlawfully present, violates the law, or poses risk to public safety. Removal must be ordered through lawful process and be documented. So, we would not just have arbitrary someone just getting returned to wherever they come from just like that. It would still have to go through a lawful process, or if they volunteer to go back. All right. Protection of persons. All persons entering Jamaica shall be treated with dignity. No person shall be subjected to arbitrary detention. Right to due process, border records, asylum and protection. All those things are included in the immigration section of the constitutional draft. So again, if you have a suggestion, I would urge you to head over to voiceofjamaica.com, click on constitutional draft, and you can make your suggestions here. All right, here you have the suggestions box. You just need a name or an alias, and you can write your suggestions here. All right, so that is it for tonight. On visiting visa, if someone is refused, do they get the full fee refunded? No. The requirements are going to be posted. It is not going to be like other countries where you go and you get interviewed and you can get it or you can't get it randomly. No, we will have specific requirements. Once you meet the requirements, you get your visa. There is no asking you a whole bunch of questions and whatever. If you submit the evidence required and the evidence matches what is being asked, and there is no false statements or anything like that, you get a visa. So if you make a submission and something is found to be false or fabricated, you are denied and you don't get nothing back. You just lost your $500. And that is how that would work. All right. So that is it for tonight. I know the agents are reporting the lives, so a lot of people did not get the notification that I am currently live, but we're going to go live again on Monday evening, and we will continue with the other sections, and then I think we're going to be just about done. Because these additions and alignment that needs to be done with the draft is not a whole lot left to be done. So I am thinking this week we should be complete with the first final draft, and then we're going to be announcing stage 2 and go from there. All right, so big up on yourself, and we're going to continue on Monday evening, and looking forward to getting this draft completed so that we can move forward with what needs to get done. All right, big up on yourself. Lawful always.